So now we're going to talk to you guys about the investigation we did at Wicklow Gaol. Some call it Wicklow Gaol, some call it Wicklow Jail. So Puca Vogue Paranormal were delighted to spend the night on location there. It was a very interesting investigation. Now, when we do investigations, if you're used to how we work, you know we have 5-6 cameras, 50-60 hours worth of footage. So we have not completed the full footage. So we're going to start off with, I suppose, one of the first captures we shared. So Rory, I'm going to come to you. We watched your footage back. Now, at that time, you didn't mark it. Would you like to tell people what you heard?
So basically, I was walking from one cell to another cell, and I heard a noise that I know wasn't one of the team. And at the time, I turned around in complete shock, knowing that there was no one there. Everyone was in locations that I knew about, and they weren't in the actual part of the building that I was in. And I heard this like whisper or something, and I just turned and I kind of just brushed it off. But like, it was definitely not human. It wasn't any of the team, as I'd been with them for such a long time that I would have known it was one of the team.
And I suppose that's a good point, Rory, because I always say about our tones. So you would know my voice, Leo's, Veronica's, Eva's, you would know everybody's voice.
Yeah.
And I think looking at that footage, we can all agree, we did share it on our social media, that it definitely wasn't a normal tone or voice of a living person. And at that time, it certainly gave you a shock because you seemed to stop dead in your tracks for it.
Yeah, no, it was such a weird feeling and sound. It was like, kind of like it was behind me, and it was down like on the ground floor or somewhere, but none of the team members were walking around at that time.
And of course, it was hard because Rory at the time was also going into a vigil with a guest. So of course we have to take into account we're on investigation with their safety, but it was certainly one we could see your reaction on it. I think a lot of people seen your reaction on that one, Rory. So as we say, you very bravely did a lone vigil yourself in one of the jail cells in Wicklow Jail.
Yep.
You were using audio recording equipment. Would you like to tell us your experience at that time?
Yeah, so I had the dictaphone placed on the door of the cell, and I kind of stood as far back as the wall where the window was, and I was like talking away, asking questions, and when we listened back to the recording, we heard a breath clear as day over the dictaphone, and I knew that wasn't me because you could hear natural breathing. I'm human, so I was breathing in the background. I knew it wasn't myself, and as clear as day, it was like someone stood over the dictaphone and just was breathing into it. And
coming back to that, when you were in the cell at that time, what was your feeling? How did the environment feel? What was your thoughts as you were doing that lone vigil?
It definitely felt cold, darker than normal. It was just cold, eerie, and it definitely felt like there was someone trying to get into the cell or was already in there with me.
So did it feel tense? And I don't put words in your mouth. Would you say that it was you tense, or would you say you had now left the location breathe to know you weren't alone?
Yes, definitely. It was definitely tense. It was like you could feel the history in that cell. Like you could tell what was going on there, the misery, the pain, the suffering, everything that was going on inside in there.
You wouldn't know
it was definitely I was definitely not alone inside there.
Well, that's good, and I think that also adds to the investigation because as of now we have shared a couple of reels of Wicklow Jail. What you will have seen is some of the things we're talking about tonight. I'm going to come next to Veronica and Eva, and I'm going to single the two ladies out because when we were setting up, so when we're on location, everybody knows I'm the one going, let's get set up. We drive it. What do you say? I'm the person that's annoying you all to get this all set up. Yeah. Would I be right? And I had been in Wicklow Jail before, and I'll go through that experience shortly. But in the cell down below in solitary confinement, so I was now having a conversation with Eva and Veronica. The camera had been just placed and push recording, and without us knowing it, as we were talking at that time, we got 2 breaths to the camera. Now that again is shared on the social media, but I think it proves that the area was beginning to now heighten, even though we had just begun the area. So I suppose moving on to that then, we then did an experiment where we had Eva and Veronica on one cell with a guest, and I was on the other side with myself and guest Maria. and she is another paranormal investigator. So it's interesting. I did a round table with a group of paranormal investigators only less than a week ago, I'd say, and I noted that in the findings, when Maria was called for William, also known as Billy, we captured an EVP, and like I always say, listen to the tone, listen to the voice, like we would talk. Listen to those and listen to what we call an EVP. And sure enough, a quick Billy just came back. And it's interesting because 2 other paranormal teams I did that round table with all captured the same name in the same area. So I would say, is that a coincidence, or is that this one person now telling us all who he is? Is that an intelligent response? I believe so, but that's up to everyone to believe. So moving on, while we were in one jail cell calling out, Eva and Veronica were in another. And I'm going to come to you guys because obviously, Veronica, you of course would have been a witness to what happened in the cell at the time. But Eva, can you tell us about what happened in the cell?
So PJ was in the other cell and he was calling out, and we were just kind of concentrating and listening. And it was like if someone was standing beside you to get your attention and kind of grabbed underneath your arm here and pinched it. And even in the audio you can kind of hear, like I get frightened, but not like that. And it was kind of, I was caught off guard, and I thought it might have been the girl beside me, but then she proceeded to say that she kind of felt a brush off her own arm. But yeah, it was definitely a fright. I nearly cried.
And I suppose, Veronica, and like bear in mind, keep remembering this says solitary confinement. I'm nearly getting tongue-tied. Veronica, what was Eva's reaction like at that time?
I actually had a perfect view of the girls because I was standing more on the other side. And personally, I didn't feel anything kind of around me myself, but when I did see Eva jump, you could just see the look on her face of kind of like, she doesn't get scared, it's kind of more like shock because you're so caught off guard, as she said. And you could see between the 2 girls in the same time that they both kind of felt the same thing just with their reaction alone. And yeah. And
I suppose that does tie back as well, because we had all grouped in that cell at one time, and I had set a motion sensor ball up inside there. So part of the investigation, we had asked if there was someone there, could they touch? We'd asked them to do whatever they would like to do, but part of it was even touch a motion. They were also doing investigations in the cell beside Veronica and Eva and a guest. We also had, and you will see this on the videos, we captured light anomaly. So we'd also captured light anomaly, but one of them was interesting, because just as the light anomaly goes from the side of the door over, I straight away say to our guest Paranormal Maria, I say, I've just gone freezing. And straight away she goes, I've just been touched in my head. So again, that's a sequence of events of light anomaly, one person feeling extreme cold, the next person feeling touched. Personal experiences, but of course validate to the same area that not only us but 2 other paranormal groups capture the same name in the same area. Tying in, of course, that the ladies from the cell next door.
So basically, you're not friends? No, there was always that me, but because they know me down here, so it was a buddy. See what does that. Come on, please move forward. Even over here, there's a device. If you tap it, just like that, you'll know you're here. Can you do something, either tap that, bang the door, do whatever you'd like to do.
Did you just say this twice in Paranormal? What?
Oh. Something's pulling my hair. Yeah, right arm. I have the most intense, like, heat on my face. My cheeks are burning. It's like when you're sick and the heat's in front of your face.
We had done spirit box sessions. So I'm going to talk to you next, Leo. So Leo, you were with 2 guests in the cell later on. You were doing a spirit box session with Eva.
Yeah.
And it was interesting. On that night, several names of team members had been called. Can you tell us about that spirit box session?
So I think the spirit box session was quite interesting because, as you say, we were doing it down below in solitary confinement on the bottom floor, so we knew we wouldn't have any contamination from anything else. So it was an active enough spirit box session, alright, and we did get a few names of the team, and they were telling us to go get them and bring them down.
And tell us who the names were.
Well, one name was your own actually. So I think we asked the question, did they remember anyone from being there before renting? I think you said your own name then, and I was looking for you to be brought down to the solitary confinement.
And I suppose, like Eva, you were there because of course you had the headphones on, you were using the spirit box, so you were preoccupied with the noise coming through. Leo, of course, was listening in the cell with our guest, so you can confirm everything Leo is saying. Well, I know we have it on the recording anyway, but just to verification.
Yeah, definitely.
And I suppose that's going to tie me back into, so before we went, I had released a video as well of, on one of my occasions in Wicklow Jail in solitary confinement, I've always said one of my harrowing experiences was knowing somebody was standing at the end of my nose face to face, and I felt them go through my head. And it's the one location I ran in, I got such a fright, it was so eerie, and it took me a long time to go back. So here we have an experience several years ago. Now you have a different dynamic with Puca Vogue Paranormal. The Puca family team were there, and yet you have Eva reenacting the same thing again in a different area. You also have the same presence of that spirit doing the same thing again, because Eva, I would be right in saying you felt heat in your face, correct?
Yeah, very close. Like if you were sick, you know, the constant like flush heat in front of your face. It was like you described it years ago, like someone was literally breathing into my face.
And again, it was down to the face, whereas mine was focusing on the cheekbone, and we all know Jack did the branding. Of course, you were having a similar experience there. And I think while we were there in location, so while we have, like, Rory got a clear reaction that stopped him in his tracks, and it takes a lot, Rory, I would say, to stop someone in their tracks. Would I be right?
100%, yeah.
Because our problem is, as investigators, 9 times out of 10 you won't get the reaction you want to see, because we're getting used to it now, and we just stop, or we say, what's that, we keep going. So I think that was a good one to capture that, your reactions to that at the time. Veronica, yourself, and Eva having done the cells and doing your sessions and asking for the touch, and we getting that back. Leo, you doing your spirit box session with Eva, and of course our guests. And I suppose another thing as well is, we do take breaks as we do investigations. So while we were outside taking a break, a light came on in a cell inside. Now we did ask the caretaker about this, had he turned on any lights? He said no, because he had shut them down for us. But if we were all outside in the area and everybody was accounted for, who turned on that light in the cell? So bear in mind, so far what you have is what we shared with you. Rory doing a lone vigil, getting the breath. Rory's reaction to what you heard on the video. Veronica in a cell with Eva, a person experiencing and seeing it happen at the time. Also us being together, myself and Veronica, asking for a motion sensor to be touched, which was. Then you have our guest Paranormal Maria, asking the questions for a direct response, and not only we got, but 2 other paranormal teams got. And I suppose the best part of this is this story is yet to be continued, because we have not finished our full review. But without putting a preempt on the exit of Wicklow Jail, I want to come back to each of you there. So Veronica, as a location and from that night and your experiences, tell me your thoughts.
Well, I've never personally been there before, but walking in there for the first time, it's definitely a lot more eerie and scary than other locations, just obviously because it's an old jail and all the cells. It is a lot darker, and there's just so much more rooms and cells, and the floors and stuff. It's just such a bigger location, and it took a while to get through all of it. But I think we should, like, if we could go back, we definitely would, just because I feel like there's a lot more questions that need to be answered, and I feel like we could get a lot more out of it with knowing what we already captured and what we could go back to.
Well, I think as a team, let's be fair, lads, it's somewhere we're all going to go back to. And I think, like something Veronica just said, I would say is, what do I always say to you all? We end up with more questions than we do answers. And Rory, if you were to sum it up in a very quick couple of words, what would you say?
Definitely from the moment that we stepped in there, you could definitely tell that you weren't alone. You could definitely feel the history that building has gone through. The people that have come and go from there, you can definitely feel they're not alone inside there.
And I think that's a very good point. You are not alone. And I suppose something as well for all of us to remember as well is, what's the tagline with Wicklow Jail, or Gael as some people call it? Welcome to the gates of hell. And I think that's a tagline, the gates of hell, but there was so much and so many stories from there. Leo, I'm going to come to you next. What's your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it definitely gives a different feel when you go to anything like that, like a jail or anything, because there's so much history, and you can feel the real kind of sadness of emotions as well, because I suppose a lot of people would have went through a lot of heartbreaking times inside there, so it's definitely a good place to investigate.
And Eva?
Yeah, definitely very sadly emotional, creepy, eerie, and I just want to go back now and do more.
And I suppose as a team, guys, let's be fair, we know we haven't concluded the review of the footage. Going on your gut from the night we had in there, do you think there's still more we haven't seen and we don't know yet?
Oh, 100%.
Yeah, I think there's a lot more that maybe questions need to be asked that haven't been asked. Now, looking back at the investigation, we can look at it and see, oh, maybe I could have asked this question there and stuff, but I think there's a lot more that we could go through to get more answers.
Well, I suppose that does bring us back, because everybody here in the room, we are paranormal investigators, so investigating is what we do. We will certainly be doing that and bringing you more. And I think a good part to finish it on as well is, we did at one stage divide and conquer. Every person took a jail cell on their own, including our guests. So I suppose the question is, would you enter the gates of hell? Would you go into a cell in the dark? Would you stay there? Would you let those cells breathe around you? And on that, I will say Wicklow Gaol and Jail. It is again a great location. It's open by day. Paranormal investigators get to go in by night. I always say these places need support, because without them we wouldn't be able to access them. Finish, and I think everybody is a team. What I'm about to say, I'd like every one of you to think about this in your mind as I say this. So for every one of you, would you go there? Would you go into a cell in the dark on your own? Wicklow Jail.
What's your name? What's your name? William, you were known as Billy. Are you here? As Billy? Are you here? What's your name? Who?
I'm freezing.
Something on the top of my head.
I'm freezing.